Well, just the three of it. What do you think? How much longer are we going to keep doing this on Zoom?
I don't know. I just barely went over a minute ago and had my second shot. So yeah, I might pass out. I might pass out on you here tonight. So
wait till tomorrow.
You and me both, Tony.
Well, Holcim's got a really good deal in place. They said that the day after you have your second shot, if you don't feel well, just stay home and they won't charge you any sick leave or vacation.
Oh, so wow.
No matter what, I'm feeling pretty sick tomorrow already.
I guess you're looking pretty ill.
Yeah, I feel pretty sick. What a big busy summer coming up, Jeff.
Well, we've had a busy winter and busy spring, but we don't have anything in the summertime yet, Tony.
Just as me, so you'll have to make me a co-host.
Okay.
For later, whenever I show the flag.
Okay.
So I logged our account for failed attempts.
It has been crazy, Jeff.
Yeah, I'll bet are you out of dust up there?
Found out today that we're going to put customers on allocations. It's March, for goodness sakes.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Yeah, and we're going to limit customers to so many loads a day. It was just a crazy. Didn't really slow down this winter much at all.
No.
That's what you should be building inventory, and we just never build any inventory. Pretty nuts.
Are all the plants doing that? Or are you going to start shipping some in?
Well, right now we're shipping some over to Colorado for another week or so, which doesn't make much sense because we don't have any, but they're kind of in a bad way over there too. So, and I don't know about Brand X down there in Leamington, down in Delta, at Ash Grove plant. Somebody told me today that they're kind of in the same boat. So anyway, it's nuts. I can't believe the price of building materials.
I think everybody's on. So you can start anytime.
Okay. Sorry, I was expecting to see Planning Commission and County Council. I was misunderstood. Okay, no problem. We'd like to start this meeting. And thank you, Denise, for that. We're excited to have the report and to kind of know what the results were of the survey. Appreciate you sending that to us in the format we got it in, and they sent out to us. So with that, this means talk about the Morgan survey. Ty, do you want to introduce our guests and then turn time over to them to explain what they've got for us?
Yes, we have Kyrene from Y2 Analytics. Lisa Benson and Mark Vlasic are also, they're part of the team. They're the landmark design folks. And Kyrene, am I missing?
So on my team, we have Danny Kauser, who's our director of data science, and he collaborated on this presentation and survey with us. And then a couple members from my team who were analysts as well, Canyon and Emily. So just brought the whole team to be a part of the presentation.
Okay, so anyway, Mayor, that's who we have to do the presentation.
Mayor, we do have Lance Evans and Mr. Fackrell has joined from the county.
Yeah, so maybe I should also just mention that we're having this meeting and our planning commission, the county commission, and the county's planning commission are all invited. And then the county's also going to host a report where our folks are invited so they can go to either meeting.
Oh, and Mayor, you're muted.
Sorry, thank you, Colleen. I also announced tomorrow night at some point we need to announce another meeting tomorrow night to reach out to the folks in the community as well. We want to necessarily announce that and make sure people are aware that they can reach out and join tomorrow evening.
Yeah, we're having the second public scoping meeting tomorrow night.
Right.
It will run from 6 to 8. So people can join in at any time. And those instructions to how to join that meeting, that's on the project website, morgan2050.org.
Okay, Pauline, you want to start off then or turn it over to your group?
Yeah, absolutely. I will go ahead and share my screen. Oh, let's see. Can I have access to share my screen and I'll walk through the survey results? There we go. All right. Is this coming up for everyone?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes, good, great.
All right. Well, just diving into the thick of things here, we have a few key findings at a high level, and then we'll get into a little bit more detail as we go through. But first off here, I think it's probably no surprise to anyone on this meeting that the small town feel that residents enjoy in Morgan City and throughout the county is a big draw. And that really contributes to the high quality of life that residents express. So we're in the mid 80s for our quality of life ratings, both for city and county residents, which is excellent. The appetite for growth throughout the county is generally pretty reserved. That probably comes as no surprise to those of you on this meeting either. About 66%, so 2/3 of our residents who responded to the survey say that the county or the region is growing too quickly. And within that group, some say that, you know, there are certain caveats in terms of what types of growth they would like to see. Others are pretty adamant that they would prefer to see none at all. So we'll look at some of those tensions as well. Overall, residents are interested in seeing shopping and recreation separate from where they live and play. So there is a sense that retail activity and the recreational activity exists in separate spheres right now. So most residents are prone to doing outdoor activities in and around Morgan. This is where they live, this is where they recreate, but they are accustomed to going elsewhere for those dining and shopping options. Most residents would be interested in seeing additional restaurants in particular and grocery stores in the region. So over half said they would like to see more restaurants, and 1/3 felt that way about seeing grocery stores develop as we're thinking about how we grow and what types of development are most palatable for residents. And then just the fifth thing here, specific to recreation, trails and aquatic recreational amenities are the things that residents would be most interested in seeing developed in the area. So that came out both in open-ended responses about what types of amenities or recreational opportunities residents would be interested in seeing, and as a response to some of our pre-specified questions. So we'll look at those dynamics as well. Before we get to the really fun stuff, I'm going to go over some of the nitty-gritty details about our survey methodology. We have 735 residents within the boundaries of Morgan County respond to our survey. 228 of those were Morgan City residents. That means that we have a margin of error of about 3.5 percentage points for the sample as a whole. And when we're looking at residents just within Morgan City, that means our margin of error is about 6 percentage points. You can see the map here shows the distribution of those residents who responded to our survey. So we've got pretty good coverage throughout the region, sort of along the major corridor. And the gray dots represent those Morgan City residents. So they're a little bit clustered together. It's a smaller geography on the bigger map, but we did get pretty good representation throughout the county. And our data have been weighted to reflect the population demographics of the county as a whole, specifically in regards to age, race, gender, party registration, and precinct. So we used the registered voter file to ensure that we had some good geographic coverage, and we weighted to some of those other demographic variables as well to ensure that our data are representative. So diving into the fun stuff here, looking at the health of the region overall, most residents say that the rural lifestyle really is the reason that they choose to live here. So 55% selecting that option in a question where we allowed residents to select up to 3 options is actually a pretty strong indicator of some sense of unanimity. So 55% of residents, strong majority, say that that rural lifestyle is a draw for them. The area's landscape and environment and good neighbors and people and safe neighborhoods are all also very common responses in that, you know, option to select up to 3 of these descriptions for why they choose to live here. We asked residents in just a few words what they like most about living in the county. And some of the words that pop out here most, you see small town, you see rural atmosphere. There's also a sense that the clean environment and sort of quiet community set away from the hustle and bustle of the city is really appealing. Again, really tying into that small town rural theme. We also find some adjectives specifically related to the neighborhoods and communities. So really good, nice, friendly people, again, in that quiet, safe environment. We asked residents to rate their overall quality of life, and we have an average of 83 out of the 0 to 100 scale among Morgan City residents and an average of 86 among county residents overall. So both incredibly positive average quality of life ratings. Nearly, I mean, very, very few respondents indicating a quality of life score below 50 on that 0 to 100 scale, really indicating a lot of satisfaction with quality of life in the region. We asked residents to what extent they agreed or disagreed with a variety of statements about Morgan County. And the things that stand out here the most, so at the top of the list, the things that really resonated with residents, both in the city and as in the county as a whole. Residents feel that Morgan is a great place to raise a family. They feel safe living here, and it's the type of community they'd want to spend their whole lives in. 9 out of 10 or more respondents, nearly all respondents, agreed with these sentiments. One area where we see some specific differences between city and county residents, Morgan City residents are significantly more likely to say that Morgan is accommodating for elderly members of the community. So there's an opportunity for aging residents' needs to be addressed a little bit better more broadly in the county as a whole, but the city is doing a great job by residents' evaluations at addressing those needs of the elderly members of the community. Additionally, a majority of residents say that the city and county do a good job of managing residential services and that the region provides all of the services that they think it should provide. So the types of amenities and services available to residents, utilities, et cetera, are accessible here. After that, we get into a little bit more of a mixed bag looking at city residents' responses specifically. So 47%, just shy of a majority, say that Morgan has the activities and amenities that are appealing to youth in the community. So a little bit of opportunity for growth there. And just a bare majority, 52%, agree with that sentiment in the county as a whole. 43% of residents in the city say that Morgan has all the recreational amenities they want it to have. So again, when looking at city residents specifically, a little bit of potential room for improvement there. 55% of residents in the county overall agree with that statement. And then when it comes to businesses and whether the area is growing and developing in a way that residents like, that's where we see the least agreement. So the most dissent or neutral opinions there. About a third of residents agree with the statement about businesses in the community, and 1 in 4 residents say that the area is growing and developing in a way that they're pleased with. When we asked residents what the most important issue facing the county is, probably, again, unsurprisingly, growth is the one that jumps off the map here. So where the size of the word corresponds to the frequency with which it was mentioned, that one really stands out in a cloud of a variety of other things. We do see taxes, infrastructure, and development popping out as well, housing, and some of those other words related to growth and infrastructure, sort of managing those growing pains. We pulled out some verbatim comments as well, just to really illustrate the things that residents are saying precisely in their own words. Too much expansion in housing and not enough infrastructure to support it, growth in taxes, how to allow for growth and create a solid tax base, but still maintain that small town feel. Residents are really plugged into the tensions that we're seeing with growth here. Lack of commercial developments such as retail and restaurants, et cetera. Better education and creating community resources like recreation center programming or community events that make sure that citizens are engaged with one another, balancing growth with the community, keeping communities rural and keeping open space. So again, all of these concerns really related to growth and some of those growing pains that residents can feel. We asked residents, thinking about planning for the future of the county and aspects of the community they live in, how important each of these factors or potential priorities are to them personally. And so I want to show this slide just to give you a sense of scope overall. When given the choice to say that everything is important, most residents do indicate that all of these things are important. So we see that a majority of residents feel that preserving a community character, maintaining low taxes, having a place for their children and family to live in the community, providing community amenities, bringing in development opportunities that will contribute revenue to the tax base, increasing home equity, increasing employment opportunities, and supporting and maintaining a mix of housing types. All of these things garner a majority support or a majority of residents who say that they are very important. And then providing efficient transportation options is the one exception to this rule. That's not something that's a high priority for a majority of residents, although 44%, excuse me, still indicate that's at least somewhat important to them as well. So really, if we have our pick of the litter, if we can have it all, residents want it all. When we ask them to really force a choice and prioritize what's the most important to them and what is the least important to them, I think we see a little bit of a clearer picture emerge with some interesting tensions. So first of all, preserving community character was selected as the most important factor for quality of life by 26% of residents, so just over 1 in 4. Maintaining low taxes, providing community amenities, having a place for my children and family to live in the community, and then bringing in development opportunities. This sort of represents that top tier of high priorities for residents when they're forced to choose one thing from this list. Bringing in development opportunities that contribute revenue and diversify the tax base is a particularly interesting one because it's divisive. We have nearly as many residents saying that that's the most important consideration to them as we have saying that that's their least important consideration. That's their lowest priority. So again, that tension, those growing pains that residents are feeling, that really manifests itself here when we're looking at the priorities that residents say contribute to their quality of life and their vision for the future of the community. And then again, highlighting the lack of priority for efficient transportation options. I think when we look at the things that draw residents to Morgan and we see that residents really are interested in that small town rural atmosphere and recognizing that while they tend to recreate in their backyard, they're used to traveling for shopping and other more retail focused amenities. Seeing this sort of play out here in terms of priorities for future development makes some sense. Transportation options aren't quite as high a priority for residents at the moment. Thinking about the aspects of community, we also asked residents to rate the level of importance of these features related to land use and appearance. So preserving natural open spaces or natural open spaces being a feature of their community, scenic views, designated open spaces, agricultural land and landscapes, and landscaping or the appearance of streets and neighborhoods were all important to a solid majority of residents. And then still a majority indicate that all of these aspects are important, but a clear second tier set of priorities, having a variety of home and yard sizes, architectural variety, and design standards for homes and yards in the community. So what neighborhoods and houses look like seems to matter significantly less to residents than the open spaces, the rural atmosphere, that agricultural land and landscapes. Those things really take precedent here. But again, when we ask residents to sort of force a choice and examine some trade-offs, natural open spaces, agricultural land and landscapes, and scenic views emerge as the clear leaders of the pack. for the most important qualities. And then those least important things, again, really just sort of fall out. Variety of home and yard sizes, design standards for homes and yards, and architectural variety are selected as the least important priorities or considerations on this list significantly more often. Shifting gears just a little bit, we asked residents to rate various aspects of their communities. The atmosphere received the most positive rating. So 86% of county residents overall rated the atmosphere as above average, and 84% said the same from Morgan City proper. The traffic and ease of traveling in your community was pretty highly rated as well. So despite some of the tension and concerns around infrastructure, residents aren't feeling that in terms of modes of transportation or traffic. So 70% rate the traffic and ease of traveling in the county above average, and 75% say the same of the city. The walkability or pedestrian friendliness is, again, one area where we see some pretty stark differences between residents within Morgan City and residents in the county at large. Probably not too surprisingly here either, given the difference in geography and proximity to various amenities. Just shy of 2/3 of residents in Morgan City rate the walkability or pedestrian friendliness above average. We get to more parity here, looking at the preservation of history and character of your community, as well as the available parks and open spaces. So a majority of residents, both within the city and in the county overall, give those a above average rating. And then trails and trailheads receives a stronger positive rating or above average rating from residents in the county overall than from residents within Morgan City specifically. So 25% in Morgan City rating trails and trailheads above average, compared to 47% in the city overall. And then the things at the bottom of the list here: activities and entertainment options, retail and shopping options, and then restaurants and dining options. So again, clear themes: recreation, open space, the atmosphere of the community really steal the show. And then our retail, dining, and entertainment amenities are less accessible within the community. And we alluded to this already, but about 2/3 of residents say that the area is growing too quickly, whether that's a bit too quickly or much too quickly. We definitely see a shift in sentiment towards saying that maybe we should slow down a little bit. 1 in 4 residents say that the county is growing at an appropriate pace, and just 9% of residents say that the area is growing too slowly. Thinking a little bit more carefully about future development, we asked residents what amenities, businesses, or services they might like to see in Morgan County in the future, and allowed them to select all that apply for this question in particular. So a majority of residents would be interested in seeing new community or recreation spaces and new food and drink options. Those are things that are appealing both city and county-wide. Activities, events, and programs are slightly more appealing for city residents than residents within the county overall. And then vice versa for shopping and entertainment. Shopping and entertainment a little bit more desired in the county at large compared to those residents in the city. But those would be our clear second tier priorities. And then thinking about services offered by the county, this is something that county residents express more demand for than residents within Morgan City, and potentially related to the evaluations of services and accessibility for seniors and elderly members in the community that we saw were significantly higher rated in Morgan City than by residents of the county at large. Thinking about development and accessibility, we asked residents ideally how far they would be interested in traveling to access the following potential amenities, businesses, or services in their area. Public transportation, residents would like to see, just about 1 in 5 residents would like to see that within a 5-minute walk, 14% within a 15-minute walk. And really we're seeing about 2/3 of residents want to see that within a 20-minute drive. So still some willingness to go quite a bit here, but that's the amenity or accessibility option that residents would like to have nearest by. And then when we're looking at community or recreation spaces, that one comes in pretty close second. 13% of residents would like to have something like that within a 5-minute walk, 21% within a 15-minute walk, and then 37% about a 5 to 10-minute drive. And then food and drink options, again, residents are willing to travel a little bit further for that. Just 4% saying they would like to have that within a 5-minute walk, 11% within a 15-minute walk, and 54%, a solid majority, say that they'd like to have that within 5 to 10 minutes. And then again, just moving along down the list here, residents are willing to travel further and further for each of these amenities. So activities, events, and programs, services, and shopping and entertainment, all of those have the bulk of residents saying that they're willing to drive 5 to 10 minutes or more for each of these amenities. We asked residents some other trade-off questions here, just to see if we could get a sense of where the desired development preferences are, if there's a particular momentum between some of these trade-off considerations. So the first one here focuses on residential developments. And the graph that you're seeing is the distribution of responses along a sliding scale with these two options as the poles or the ends of those scale. So that first one, residential developments with multifamily housing and new amenities, would be on the far left side of the scale. Residential developments with traditional single-family homes without new amenities and higher taxes would be on the far right side of the scale. And then a midpoint selection would mean an even mix of those two things. So we see that the momentum here is shifted towards residential developments with traditional single-family housing without new amenities, even with that inclusion of potentially higher taxes. It's not a completely one-sided distribution. There's definitely a little bit of a peak, but the bulk of those responses are shifted towards that traditional single-family housing style development. The second graph or distribution here, we're looking at a trade-off between increasing big box commercial presence and increasing locally owned shops and small business presence. And this one, we have a little bit more of a clear majority actually shifted towards the increased presence of locally owned shops and small businesses. But again, a little bit of a peak on that left-hand side with some residents, I would say about a third of residents there, focusing more on that increased big box presence, just the level of accessibility and convenience that comes with that. And then the most divisive trade-off sliding scale that we have here on the far right. So the first option, multifamily housing and a greater potential for commercial and economic development versus larger single family lots and less opportunity for commercial and economic development. And when we frame the housing choice in terms of the opportunity it provides for that development in the community, we see some pretty divided responses here, although the momentum is still shifted mostly to the right side with those, again, larger single family lots and the more traditional style that we've seen in Morgan historically. So really interesting sort of trade-offs and preference expressions here. And again, I think that commercial and economic development framing is something that's fascinating because it's not something that residents inherently or intuitively connect to the types of housing that they see in their community and that level of growth. We also asked some questions about land usage and private property rights in particular. So we asked residents, which of the following statements best describes their view about the various types of commercial activities that property owners in Morgan County could consider for their private land? And a slight majority, although we're not much better than a coin toss here, a slight majority of residents say that in order to preserve individual property rights, property owners should be able to engage in whatever commercial activities they choose on their own private land. Just under half of residents felt that property owners should be limited in the types of commercial activities that are allowed, even on private land. So again, really near a coin toss here, not a lot of clear expression of where residents would like that line to be drawn, but a slight majority indicating that that individual property right and property owners' designation of how they use their land should win out. We also just asked a question about what types of commercial activities the code should continue to permit on large residential properties if property owners are allowed to engage in those commercial activities according to current zoning. For example, farming and agriculture was the most appealing commercial activity for large residential properties. Equestrian riding areas comes in second there. Commercial greenhouses in third place. Event venues and reception facilities was favored by a bare majority there, 52%. And then vacation or short-term rentals falls short of a majority in favor, but 40% approved that use of large residential properties as well. Only 2% of residents said that none of these activities should be permitted. We asked residents what type of commercial development they would most like to see occur in the area, and restaurants really went out at the top of the list here. 56% of residents selected restaurants as their most, or as a desired type of commercial development, given the option to select 3 again. Grocery stores also at the top of the list here, both for residents within Morgan City specifically and within the county at large. Entertainment options were slightly more favored among Morgan City residents than those in the county at large. But again, we find parity when we think about general retail options. Just shy of 1 in 4 residents, both in the city and the county, would like to see something like that. And then some of these other options really falling short of that mark. So light industrial, consumer goods manufacturing, startup or entrepreneurial spaces, professional services. There's a constituency for each of these things, but certainly not as high in demand as that restaurants and grocery store options. We asked residents to select from a list of transportation projects that might be important to them, again, which was the most and which was the least important. And here we found a lot of sort of, again, tension or lack of consensus really is what we're seeing. So 18% of residents said that designing and maintaining roads for multiple modes of transportation is the most important priority for them, but 10% of residents said that that was their least important priority. 16% of residents indicated that expanding routes to and from regional destinations, such as connections to major interstates and highways or increased connections to major interstates and highways, was the most important priority when it comes to transportation projects. But 18% said that that was the least important priority. So again, some divisiveness when it comes to transportation projects and the areas where residents would be interested in seeing the community invest. But we get to a little bit less division here. Looking at connecting local biking and walking routes, 15% of residents said that that was their most important priority for transportation projects. 10% said that that was their least important. And then connecting and expanding the city's trail system. Again, all of these pretty divisive. There's not a lot of clear indications that any of these projects are really high priority or really low priority for residents. We're really tossing a coin on a few of these, but 14% said that connecting and expanding the trail system was the most important, and 11% said that was the least important. A couple of these things that come up negative in terms of priority support: expanding local routes through the county, such as surface streets and neighborhood roads. That was more likely to be selected as least important than more important. And then the last one here, widening roads to handle increased traffic, significantly more likely, 2 to 1, more likely to be selected as the least important project on the list, with just 8% saying that that was their most important transportation priority. And there's a low appetite for additional taxes to improve recreation spaces, activities, and programs in the community. But we find that an average of $70 is about what residents say they would be willing to pay each year. So we don't have a huge peak at 0, which is good news, but not a lot of room for additional spending either. So $70 a year is the average maximum. We see a peak at $100 a year there. So somewhere between $5 and $10 a month for residents is about the appetite for investment in some of those additional amenities that the region could provide. And so thinking about some of those amenities that residents would be interested in, again, we asked about behaviors, both inside and outside of Morgan. We find that really residents travel for a lot of the activities they engage in, but when it comes to recreating, that's really where they're staying on their home turf. So using walking, biking, or jogging trails is one of the few things where residents are significantly more likely to do that within Morgan rather than outside. And then participating in outdoor recreation and in public parks or open spaces. Also, residents are more likely to do this in Morgan County than go outside the county for that. We asked residents what parks, fields, or facilities their households use most often. Riverside Park jumped out at the top of the list here, with 1 in 3 residents selecting that as their most used park. And then Kent Smith Memorial Park was number 2, with sort of a long tail responding to those other options, but significantly less popular than the top 2. And then the primary reasons that residents use these parks and facilities: close to home is the number 1 consideration. Access to sports fields and courts comes in at number 2, and then playground equipment is the 3rd most important consideration there. Trails, trees, and atmosphere, picnic facilities, again, all of these things sort of playing a little bit of a role, but that proximity to where people live really is key in determining which facilities or amenities they visit most frequently. We asked residents which parks, trails, fields, or open spaces outside the county, if any, they use most often. Other outdoor spaces was the most frequently mentioned category. And then other city trails or programmed open spaces was selected by just under 1/4 of residents. Other city parks and other recreation centers or fields were less frequently selected, but mentioned. And the things that we see really jump out here. Again, we included the word cloud to give you a sense of some of those themes, but pulled out some of these specific verbatim responses from residents. So one resident said that they camp at Cutler Flats in Ogden Valley every summer with their extended family. Another resident said that local trails are short and public lands are trapped behind private property or unclearly marked, so they're difficult to access. Sometimes it's just easier to go other places where the public land is more clearly designated. Snow Basin and Powder Mountain have some of the best trails and advertised activities and events. So some of these things that really pop out, again, Ogden, Weber, hiking, Snow Basin, the Bonneville Shoreline Trail. Some of these things that jump out really are still within relatively close proximity to the county. Just some of those advertising or programmed areas are a little bit more appealing. We asked residents how interested they would be in seeing the county incorporate the following types of open spaces. So most residents say that they'd like to see more passive or unused open space in or around their neighborhood. 53% say they'd like to see that in or around their neighborhood. 47% say they'd like to see more parks or programmed open space in or around their neighborhood. 46% would be interested in seeing more agricultural open spaces incorporated in their neighborhood. And just 36% say that they'd be interested in seeing a wildlife refuge or conservational open space incorporated, again, in or around their neighborhood. A little bit more divisiveness on that one. Residents would be interested in seeing those types of areas incorporated on major thoroughfares. And then when it comes to agricultural open space, there's also an interest in seeing that around major thoroughfares. Very little or very few residents say that they don't want any of these types of open spaces incorporated in Morgan. Just 7% don't want more passive or unused space. So certainly the demand is there in a variety of areas in the community. And then just 10% of residents say that they don't want more agricultural open space in Morgan. Again, definitely some interest. How that's incorporated varies a little bit, but there's certainly appetite for preservation of or incorporation of more open space. It's hard to imagine more open space in Morgan, but the appetite is there for sure. We asked residents what types of improvements, if any, should be made to the trail system in the county. The primary selections here were increased trail miles, more trail heads, connecting gaps in the trail system, and linking neighborhoods with the trail system. So those were selected by about 1 in 3 residents each. And in a list where we had an option to select up to 3, that's a pretty good odds. So most residents really interested in those things. Improved river access also lands near the top of the list here. And then restrooms or amenities at trailheads, also sort of mid-tier. When it comes to the types of recreational amenities that residents would like to see that aren't currently available in the area, we see this again pop out both in open-ended comments that residents gave and sort of closed-ended verbatim or closed-ended, category selection responses. A pool jumps out at the top of the list here, both in that word cloud and the categorized responses. Rec Center also appealing hiking trails, bike trails, off-road trails, all interesting options. And then some of the other words that pop out in this: additional recreational activities or opportunities residents would like to see, access for swimming or aquatic facilities, more trails in general, and more biking, hiking accessibility. So really some focus on trails and aquatic facilities, and some of those trail improvements as well. And this also shakes out when we look at budget allocation. So we asked residents to play a little bit of a hypothetical game with $100 from the Morgan County Parks and Recreation budget. And if they were to allocate those funds, we find that 64% of residents would allocate some portion of their funding to aquatic recreation facilities. And those pools or aquatic facilities come in at the top of the list for average allocation with $31 on average. 60% of residents would allocate some portion of their funds to hiking or biking trails and trailheads. And those types of amenities receive $23 on average out of that $100 budget. And then 46%, so just shy of half of residents, would allocate some portion of their allotted budget to natural open spaces. And those natural open spaces receive $16 on average from that budget. Sports facilities and a senior center were appealing to just over a third of residents each and received budget allocation of $9 to $11. And then additional public parks just generally was appealing to just over 1 in 4 residents, or was funded by just over 1 in 4 residents, with an average allocation of $7 out of that $100. And that concludes our whirlwind tour for this evening. I'm happy to take any questions that folks have.
Yeah, so a while ago you said that residents, I think you said the figure was $70. Was that what they would be willing to spend a year on increased recreation, or something maybe like a rec center or something like that?
On average, yes. So we have an average of $70 a year is what residents would be willing to pay in additional taxes or service fees of some sort to have additional recreational amenities or programs, yes. Any other questions or comments?
It was an interesting response. I've always felt very strongly about this is when it was mentioned that a lot of the public land is tied up behind private land. And I think for Morgan County, that really does have some limiting factor on our ability to recreate. I mean, if we could somehow get public up here on the back, the Wasatch back up on this mountain, the camp and that would make a lot of difference. But obviously it is tied up behind private property. So
yeah, and we did see that sort of concern about accessibility and where it's safe to recreate versus where we're running into private property came up in some of residents' comments. So it is interesting to see that tension expressed a bit.
A lot to digest there.
Yes, I realize we just really took you on a wild ride there. So thanks for hanging with us.
Colleen, I appreciate your efforts. Appreciate the way you ran through that. A lot of information that we'll need to digest and look through. Would you please summarize for us the next opportunities for us to listen to and weigh in and participate in this process? The one is tomorrow. Go ahead, sorry.
No, you're fine. In terms of continuing to listen to the process, we'll be presenting this data again in the county commission meeting I'm going to get all of my dates mixed up. Lisa, is that one in 2 weeks?
It's April 6th.
April 6th is the county commission meeting where we'll be presenting this data again. And then the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board meeting will be the following week. Is that correct, Lisa?
We've got a lot of meetings on the calendar here. The 14th, April 14th, will be the Project Advisory Committee meeting. So we'll be reviewing this again.
For those who are interested in following this process, becoming more involved, I'm going to suggest this information down on the website. Is that correct? The
Yeah.
Morgan 2020 with the calendars and dates and things.
Yeah, we'll be posting that information so they can join that the next county session.
I'd encourage everyone listening tonight to access that Morgan 2020 website. As you access that, look at comments that have been made, and also look at upcoming events, become more involved in this process they can. But again, restating that tomorrow evening will be that another reach out to the community. I forget the proper term you call that meeting.
It's just a public input meeting. It's just kind of an open-ended discussion, and we're happy to talk about what anybody wants to discuss.
So I'd encourage those of you that are here this evening to reach out to your friends and let them know about that. Again, it starts at what time tomorrow night?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock, 6 to 8 is when that's scheduled for. So I encourage those that can reach out to that and listen to that meeting again tomorrow evening. And maybe maybe the county council, the city council meetings, we can maybe send that out to our personnel again so they're aware of that meeting on our end of things. Okay. If there are any other questions, we'll maybe wrap up. Last just put a post out in the chat that website and what the website is in the chat if you want to access that chat for the website, or you can contact Morgan City or contact Lance at Morgan County and they can give that information to you.
Ray, I have one question.
Okay.
You know, at the beginning of the survey, there seemed to be a pretty good level, a pretty high level of contentness, a lifestyle, whatever we'd want to call it, in Morgan City and Morgan County. How does that compare with other community areas in Utah, surrounding areas and communities?
Yeah, so in terms of overall quality of life, residents in Morgan are really on the high end of average for satisfaction compared to some of the other cities and towns that we've surveyed. So really that 83 to 86, depending on which group we're looking at, is quite high. There is only a handful of other cities that have quite that level of enjoyment and resident satisfaction. So, and a big part of that is the open air, that small town feel, the rural environment that residents are really happy about, and that has drawn residents here.
So if everybody's happy, you're telling us we don't need to do anything different?
I don't know about that.
Okay. Well,
thank you.
If that's all the question, we'll thank you again and excuse this group this evening. We'll end this Zoom meeting. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for your interest, and continue on the process. Thank you. Morgan City Council, please join into the next meeting for our council meeting. You need to join into the next Zoom meeting that Denise sent out that link out to you.
That's a separate link.
Isn't that correct, Denise? Separate link? Yes.
I need to leave this meeting, Mayor, and go to another one.
Yes.